Well, first of all, thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I've been looking forward to visiting Malaysia for some time. And when I received the invitation for Dr. Raslan and the support from Dr. Zachary, I enthusiastically accepted, because this is my first visit to Malaysia, but it's not the first time I've seen Malaysia. That's right. He said, have you ever been to Kuala Lumpur? I said, no, but I've been within 200 miles of it. So I was talking at lunch with some of the faculty and describing my first view of your beautiful country. And it actually helped me. Malaysia has helped me in my space flight directly, because when I first looked down at the Earth, I didn't know where we were. We were over a desert, or we were over an ocean, and it was hard to know exactly where we were on the planet. I would have to look at the computer to tell me where we were on the planet, until we came to Malaysia. Because the peninsula is so distinctive, it's so clear, that I looked down from the window, I said, there's Malaysia. And that was the beginning of my understanding of the geography of the Earth, because once I placed myself, then I could say, there's the Great Barrier Reef, there's Australia. It took me a while to find New Zealand, though. It's kind of small. So my first view of Malaysia is a strong memory, and it's a strong memory for me. And then I saw it again and again and again. And the beauty of your country really drew me. And I said, someday, I'll have a chance to visit there. And I have to say that now that I've been here almost a week and experienced the warmth and the hospitality and the generosity of Malaysia, that I'm firmly convinced that this is simply my first visit and not my only one. So I want to tell you today about dreams coming true. I want to talk to you today about a childhood dream, something I wanted to do for my whole life that eventually happened. And I hope that when we get past my talk at the very end, you will share with me what your dreams are. Because this is not a talk about becoming an astronaut. Well, it sort of is. But this is a talk about making your dream come true. This is a talk about working to force your dream to come true. This is a talk about hearing that your dream will never come true and not believing the people that say that. This is a talk about living your life in a way that will allow you to make a difference in the world, that will allow you to, in some ways, be more than the people around you thought you could be. And anyone who tells you that your dream, no matter how crazy it is, isn't going to come true, you just have not to believe those people. And if they persist, then you tell them the story I'm about to tell you. Okay? I wanted to fly in space my whole life. I cannot remember a time that I did not want to fly in space. I loved everything about being in the air. Now, as a small child, that's not necessarily a good thing, because I would jump up on the sofa and I would hop off. And as I started to hop off higher and higher things, my parents bought me a helmet, because they got tired of having to go to the doctor to treat my head injuries. I was firmly convinced that I could fly, which is I think you can question the intelligence there, because I didn't learn from trial. Keep hitting the ground. I was the kid that would go to the airport and hang on the fence just to watch the airplanes take off. I would go to the hangar and watch the mechanics working on the engines. This whole thing fascinated me. And when I started school at 5 or 6 years old, it was a time when the United States was just beginning to send people to space. I was too young to remember Sputnik, but I was right at the right age to see the American moon program go. And the astronauts were my heroes. And at the time, the astronauts were everybody's heroes. So when I was in first grade, every single kid in first grade planned to be an astronaut. And the adults were all on board with it, right? So your teacher says, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an astronaut. And what does your teacher say? Great, go for it. You'll do it someday. But they didn't believe that. They thought they were just humoring a kid. I am thinking, yeah, you're right, I am going to go do this someday. Around 12 years old, I'm in 5th or 6th grade, and not all my friends want to be astronauts anymore. And what's wrong with these people? They want to be policemen, they want to be firemen, they want to be movie stars, they want to play professional football. What's wrong with these people? Obviously, the job to do is astronaut. And about half the class still wanted to do that. And the message from the adults was still the same. Yeah, kid, sure, that's great. Go be an astronaut. But they didn't really mean it. They didn't believe it. They were just saying that. Kid doesn't know what he's talking about. Got to be about 16 years old. I'm in high school now, haven't gone to college yet, and I'm talking to the guidance counselors in my school about what I'm going to be when I grow up. And it's painfully obvious to me that I'm going to be an astronaut when I grow up. But the guidance counselors don't say, sure, kid, fine, go for it. Because their job is to say what they think, as opposed to your first grade teacher whose job it is to just be nice. So the guidance counselors don't say, sure, kid, great, go for it, be an astronaut. Now, you know what they said? They said, you're not smart enough to be an astronaut. You're not athletic enough to be an astronaut. You're not good looking enough to be an astronaut. You don't dress well enough to be an astronaut. You don't know the right people. You're growing up in this tiny little town in the middle of the southern United States. You don't know anybody. People that become astronauts, they have connections. You don't have any connections. You're never going to be an astronaut. So forget this silliness. Get down to work. Pick a career. Dress for success. And stop this childhood silliness. Well, I was like, what? My first grade teacher said it was a good idea. And that's what I started to hear. And not just from the teachers. My friends would say the same thing. No way you're going to be an astronaut. No way any of us are going to be astronauts. We need to go get real jobs. We need to make some money. We need to have a career, something that will be planned for the rest of our lives. And I realized at that point that of all the people that had started with me in first grade, where everybody wanted to be an astronaut, I was the only one left. And people were talking about having jobs like lawyers. Yikes. Bankers. So right about that age, I started to realize that when I said I wanted to be an astronaut, it caused people to not take me seriously. It caused people to think of me as someone that just has this silly fantasy. His head was in the clouds. And so I became embarrassed about my dream. I stopped telling people I wanted to be an astronaut. Because if I said that to someone, they wouldn't listen to anything else I had to say because I was obviously some silly kid that didn't know what they were talking about. And it's hard when you have a dream and you can't talk about it. Because it makes it almost impossible to find other people with the same dream. And what I later found out was that all the people who wanted to be astronauts, many of them wouldn't say that to anyone. And so it was impossible for me to find anyone else who shared this dream. And that went on for some time. Anyway, I buckled down. I stopped talking about what I wanted to do as an astronaut. I was very interested in science and engineering, so I became an engineer. Went to graduate school. All those degrees, my mother would call and say, are you ever going to graduate? Aren't you going to get a job? I say, no, Mom, I'm still in school. But at age 23, I had the qualifications, the minimum qualifications to become an astronaut. And it turned out that was the year that they first took applications for the space shuttle. And so I was a graduate student. I filled out the forms. It's about a 1/4-inch thick sheet of paper, sheaf of papers. October, right around this time of year, fold it all up, put it in the envelope, send it to NASA. Wait. I don't know if you know how many of you have gone through the process of applying for college, but it's a lot like that. Fill out the forms, send them in, wait. The months go by, you don't hear anything. Finally, April comes around, and a letter from NASA shows up in my mailbox. NASA, to Dan Barry. NASA wrote to me. Unfortunately, it was a very thin envelope. So I had a feeling it was not good news. Because, you know, when it's good news, they send you thick envelopes. So I open it up, and sure enough, dear Mr. Barry, we regret to inform you that you have not been selected to be an astronaut. We had a lot of much better applications than yours, and have a good life. You know, love NASA. So, okay, that's fine. First application. You know, there's a lot of other people out there. I'm kind of young. So the next year, I'm 24 years old, and figured the second time's the winner. So I send that one in October again, and about 9 months later, in April, I got a letter from NASA. Thin envelope. Rejected. All right, fine, 25 years old. Fill out the application, send it in. October, wait till April. What do you think happened? Help me out with this. Rejected. Where was I? 26 years old? What do you think happened? Come on. Rejected. And by now, I'm Dr. Barry. I have a PhD. I was interested in, I was doing engineering, but I was interested in medicine, and I didn't know anything about, I was interested in biology, actually. I didn't know anything about medicine. So I thought, well, I'll go to medical school while NASA figures out that they really ought to hire me. And so I was a PhD. You know, now I've got some credentials, and I'm in medical school, and I send in the application in October, and what do you think happened? Come on, help me out here. Rejected. 28 years old, send in the application. What do you think? Come on, help me out here. I'm not hearing anything from the back. Rejected. All right, now I have an MD and a PhD. I go off to the University of Michigan. I'm seeing patients. I'm taking care of people. For sure, NASA's not going to turn down a guy with an MD and a PhD. So what am I, 29 years old? Send the application in. What's the result? These guys know what they're talking about. Rejected. So 30 years old, send in the application. Wait 9 months. What's the result? Come on, you guys got to join in here. What do you think? What do you think? Rejected. Of course. This is not an easy thing. I wouldn't be telling you the story if it was that easy. 31 years old now. I've finished my medical residency. I've got a job. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan. Big fancy school. I have a research laboratory. I'm seeing patients. I got 2 doctoral degrees. I got research grants. There's no way they're turning me down. Right in the application. Send it out. 9 months later, what's the result? Rejected. Come on, people. Rejected. That's right, rejected. 32 years old. Now I've really got an established program. I'm getting known. I'm publishing papers. I'm actually flying experiments on NASA aircraft to do zero-G experiments. So I actually am interacting with NASA a little bit. And how could they turn down a guy who flies experiments, has grants, sees patients, is a research laboratory? No way, right? So I send in the application, and what do you think? Come on, people, this group, look, this group is not answering. All right? So I expect you to tell me what happened. That's right, rejected, yeah. All right. What am I now? 34 years old. You know, you have to remember that it has been more than 15 years since I've ever met someone who wanted to be an astronaut besides me, and I haven't told anyone other than my wife that it's my true objective. So now I have to go to my department chairman, I have to go to my boss, I have to say, I need you to write me a letter of recommendation. And he says, sure, Dan. Wait a minute, are you looking for a new job? I said, well, I'm not looking for a new medical job. I want to be an astronaut. Now think about going to your boss and saying, I need a letter of recommendation to become an astronaut. What does he say? He says, what? And he says what every single other person has said to me since I was 16 years old, which was, that's ridiculous. Nobody becomes an astronaut. But I'll write you the letter anyway. 34 years old, he writes me this great letter, send the whole thing in, letters of recommendation from chairmen of departments all over the world, and what do you think happened? Come on, people. Rejected. 35 years old, go back to him and say, you know, remember that letter you wrote last year? Didn't work. I need a better letter this year. And he says, didn't work. I said, no, I'm still here. He says, well, all right, but you are 35 years old. Don't you think you're too old to be an astronaut? Say, what? So I call NASA. By this time, I have a phone number for him. I call NASA, and the manager of the astronaut selection office, whose name is Dwayne Ross, a real southern guy, picks up the phone, and he says, hello. I said, hello, this is Dan Barry, and I'm wondering if I'm becoming too old. And Dwayne says, Dan Barry, well, we know who you are. So, well, you should after all these years. So you just throwing this application directly into the trash can, or are you actually looking at it? And he said, well, no, we're looking at it, and you're not too old. You can keep applying. We enjoy seeing your application every year. Say, okay, thanks, Dwayne. Hang up the phone. So I'm thinking, you know, now I've talked to Dwayne. I've got letters coming from everybody. I'm doing all this research. I'm flying experiments on NASA aircraft, and Dwayne said I wasn't too old. So I go back to the department chairman, force him to write the best letter of recommendation he's ever written in his life. And I tell him I'm not too old. I'm only 36. Send it all in, and what do you think happened? Rejected. That's Dwayne. So I'm 37 years old. Send the whole thing in, sit around and wait, and I get a phone call from Dwayne. He says, hey, Dan, this is Dwayne. I said, hey, Dwayne. He says, we'd like you to come down and have an interview. I said, I got an interview? That's pretty good. So you go down and you spend a week at NASA, and you meet the astronaut corps. And you go with a group of about 20 people, so you meet 20 people who all want to be astronauts. You have to realize the first time in 20 years I'd met anyone else who wanted to be an astronaut. And these guys, unlike my first grade colleagues, were serious. They also had dreamed their whole life about being an astronaut. This was something that they're passionate about, and they were about the same age. Whew. I can't tell you the impact of finally meeting people who cared as much about something that I had dreamed about for 35 years. And so when I went home, I said to my wife, I don't know if they're going to make me an astronaut or not, but I can tell you that I have finally met the group of people that I'm going to work with for a very long time. Because I finally found people who believe in the same things I believe in, and who are passionate about the same things that I'm passionate about, and who have the same dream that I have. And she said, okay. So we wait. You wait again. And the months go by, you don't hear a thing. And finally, NASA says, we're going to announce the next astronaut class on this date. And that date, they call you. And if you get a call from Dwayne, rejected, okay? Because Dwayne's the manager. If you get a call from the chairman of the selection committee, you're in. Okay? So you know the moment you pick up the phone. If it's Dwayne, that's bad news. So the week, they finally announced the date. And it turns out that I'd already scheduled this big vacation, a big family vacation in the Bahamas for that week. And so I called Dwayne the week before. I said, Dwayne, I'm not going to be anywhere near a telephone on that Monday morning. And there's this pause, and he goes, well, Dan, that's too bad. I'm like, Dwayne. He says, tell you what, if you can find a phone at 11 o'clock Monday morning, you call me, and I'll give you the answer. And I was like, Dwayne, I don't want to call you. I want to call this other guy. Because if you talk to Dwayne, it's bad news. Talk to the other guy, it's good news. You have to call me, Dan. So I said, well, Dwayne, I'm going to the bookstore tonight, and I'm going to buy books for my vacation, and I buy a lot of history and science fiction and that sort of thing, but I'm wondering, maybe you think I should buy some astronomy books? And Dwayne's not giving you an inch. He's like, both those subjects sound interesting. So the day finally comes. I'm in the Bahamas. I walk into town. There were no cell phones then, so we just had, I bought 3 big rolls of quarters, and I'm feeding them into this old beat-up telephone, and it's clinking away, and it's finally there, and it's ringing in Houston, Texas, and the guy picks up the phone and says, hello, and I go, it's Dan Barry, and I'm calling for Dwayne. And it's Dwayne, of course, and he goes, hey, Dan, how's your vacation going? I'm like, Dwayne, that depends on what you have to say right now. And he says, well, there's someone here who wants to talk to you. So that year, accepted. Yeah. So I got there, and the very first day, the chief of the astronaut office said, you know, there's 23 of you here now, and if you work together, the selection's done. If you work together, if you form a team, if you share your expertise with everyone else, every single one of you will fly in space. And we all did. And that sense of teamwork and camaraderie and working with other people that are as passionate about your dream as you are, that was incredible. And all those people who said, you're not smart enough, you're not athletic enough, you're not good looking enough, you don't dress right, and you don't know the right people, they're wrong. And if anyone tells you that about your dream, they're wrong, and you cannot listen to them. It's not that they're bad people. They were trying to protect me from disappointment. They were trying to help me kind of get past this silliness. But what I learned later was those are people whose dreams did not come true. Those were people who had disappointments in their lives, and they were trying to protect me from that disappointment. You just simply cannot listen to them. You have to say, that was your life, this is mine, I have this dream, and I'm going to do it. And the bigger point is that for 20 years, every single day, I did something that made me closer to flying in space. I would not go to bed at night without either reading something or writing something or doing something that got me closer to going to space. And because I worried that if I skipped one night, if I skipped one day, that then there'd be 2 days and 3 days and a week and a month, and then finally the dream would die. So you have to keep that dream alive. And if you do, you can make it happen. So one of the things that I talk about are robotics. I have a robotics company. I talk a lot about robots. But I think that one of the big distinctions between humans or biology, for that matter, and robots is the way that we're able to adapt to change. So over the course of 20 years, I changed a lot of things. I adapted to an environment of how you get through this process, how you do medical research, how you approach a career. And I think that one of the big distinctions between robots and humans or biology is that ability to adapt to a new environment. And when you go to space, you completely adapt. You know, you're in a zero-G environment, you're floating, your body starts to change the moment you get there. And yet we get there and we're able to perform and do tasks and work on things and build stuff like space stations because biology is so inherently adaptive. And I just thought that, having mentioned that you'd be interested to see, this is my best example. We're going to run the octopus video with no sound. My best example of biological adaptation, and I think that this is part of the answer to why we don't just use robots to explore space. So this is my friend, Roger Hanlon, diving in the Cayman Islands. And he came across this kelp bed, but it's not a kelp bed. Did you see that? Let's run that back in super slow motion. Don't you love super slow motion? So we're going to run that back. Watch the octopus. Watch how this creature, oh, I guess we're going to run it again. Looks like it's running over again. Well, that's okay. The video itself will run in super slow motion. You don't need to start it again. So we get to watch it twice. Watch the kelp bed transform into an octopus. So this creature that has spent how many millions of years in this environment is so incredibly adapted to it. It's so perfect in terms of its sensory apparatus to be able to sense that kelp, and then its motor apparatus to be able to conform to it. So watch it go, and as it goes back, watch its eye. Watch its eye. Gone. Now that's biology. That's adaptation. That's what we do so much better than the robots. You can go ahead and stop that. And switch over to the other video, the three-flight video. So now I want to share with you how it felt to go. I mean, I finally got this dream to come true. I finally got selected. A lot of training, 4 years go by, and I'm finally on the launch pad. I had the incredible opportunity to fly 3 times to space, 3 times on the space shuttle. I got to do 4 spacewalks. I get to go outside the protection of the shuttle and the station and see the Earth from above the sky with nothing between me and the Earth but a thin plastic visor. So this is a composite video of those 3 flights. Let's make sure we have sound way up. First thing you do, you get assigned about 1 year before you launch, and you make a patch. So you can see I have a patch on this shirt. In fact, this shirt flew with me on that mission. So this shirt went to space with me. This is taking off in a T-38 aircraft. So this jet is a supersonic jet. It rolls 720 degrees a second, which means you're right side up, upside down, right side up, upside down, right side up in 1 second. It's fast. It's a hot jet. But where we train in Houston, Texas, it takes about an hour and a half to fly from that training base to the launch base in Florida. And what I'm saying to my friend as we're taking off here is hour and a half in the jet, same trip, 3 minutes in the space shuttle. If you want to go from here to New York on the space shuttle, 45 minutes. So if you're late for a meeting, I'm your guy. And you don't even have to go through security to get on board. About 4 hours before launch, getting dressed, about 3 miles from the launch pad in case the thing blows up. They don't let you, the buildings are pretty far away. Finally getting ready to go. It's dawn, and it's time to leave the planet.